Hello, my name is Audrey, and today I'm going to be talking about the extent of online privacy in the United States. And to do this, I'm going to be covering what exactly data mining is, how our data is distributed, and what kind of laws are in place to protect us from companies selling out our data. And lastly, I'll be covering what we can do personally to exercise our own privacy rights. So, in a span of a couple decades, the use of technology, as we know, has globalized to the point where over 85% of Americans now own a smartphone. And you can see this in the charts. According to the Pew Research Center, this is 50% higher than it was 10 years ago. So, this means at this rate, sooner or later, practically all Americans are going to be either using smartphones, laptops, tablets, as well as a myriad of online services. So, what does this mean when it comes to data accumulation and privacy? Is our privacy just as protected behind a screen as it would be in person? And how do we know where our data is even going? Because every app or service that we use can pull out information about us, whether it be TV show interests, GPS history, or even down to our daily sleeping habits. At times we do recognize when we put out our data. So, for example, if you're shopping on Amazon, you put in your name, address, and phone number. But the majority of data collection and sharing actually happens beyond our knowledge and perhaps without you even noticing. So, data mining by definition is the extraction of patterns representing knowledge. So, this means data is going to be stored in large databases as well as other massive information repositories. But in simpler terms, this basically means data mining is a process of collecting huge sets of data from people and then using them for purposes like analysis. And you can see why companies would want to use data mining techniques because by analyzing these huge sets of data, your data, it can be very useful for companies. So, for instance, you could use this technique for developing better marketing strategies or predicting trends, for example. So, data mining is practically everywhere around us, from business to education to even healthcare. But what's going on is that our data is being shared, distributed, and sold even without our knowledge. How is this happening? A vast majority of companies work with third-party data brokers. And to just give a bit of context, data brokers are an individual company that specialize in collecting data. And this data is from either public or private records. And then they sell that or license that information to other third parties and companies. So here's a little infographic about data brokers. And you can see that Axiom has data for over 500 million consumers. So that is a very, very large number. And so these companies sell data, and buyers of this data are able to access a very wide range of information about a consumer. In California specifically, data brokers are required to register with the Attorney General, which at least adds a little bit more transparency in this process. But as of now, most states across the nation don't even require data brokers to publicly disclose their information. So, in this way, it's very unsettling to see that consumers really don't know that their data is being sold to a third party broker and who exactly the broker is then sending it to. So, our privacy online is not protected because we really have no idea where exactly our information is going. And even if it doesn't mean selling data, many companies share access to our information. So, for example, PayPal is an app that or service that I use very often. And recently they disclosed a list of companies they share consumer data with. So, this includes phone numbers, date of birth, bank account information, as well as different purchases. And so the sample chart here on the left shows some examples of what kind of third-party companies PayPal shares information with. And so you see here there's auditors, marketers, commercial partners, as well as financial product providers. But this chart doesn't actually do justice to the very long and extensive list that they disclosed. And this is actually very recent. So this was disclosed on April 1st, 2021, which is not even 2 months ago. But I've included a short clip just scrolling through the third parties page. And so, as you can see, PayPal shares data with more than 600 third party companies across the globe, which is probably something that not a lot of people had read or heard about at all. So, this is just a huge problem. And in the broader picture, it's not really what anyone signed up for. Our data is being sold, distributed, and analyzed um, with thousands of companies out there, not only PayPal. And so, between the consumer and company relationship, our privacy is clearly violated. And we did sign privacy policies, but the majority of people don't read or understand them. And that's not necessarily the fault of the consumer because these policies are, as we know, very hefty, long, and oftentimes wordy. And so, this is even statistically proven. According to the Pew Research Center, over half of the American population believe that a company's privacy means that a company is going to protect the user's privacy and will not share data, which is in any case not true and a very common misconception. So in reality, the privacy policies that they put out doesn't protect consumer privacy at all, but instead practically protects the company in using the consumer's data. So, if this is the case, what kind of laws are there to protect us? The issue is that there isn't one comprehensive federal law that governs data privacy. So, although there are different complex patchwork of sector specific laws, like laws regarding telecommunications, health, or even finance, most privacy related laws are established by the state. So this means that there is a lack of adequate legislation right now in the United States because there is no set mandate on protecting consumer privacy. So just to go over a few major sector-specific laws, the first data privacy law in the United States was established in 1974, and that's the US Privacy Act, which basically allows for citizens to access data held by government agencies. And then the HIPAA Act, established in 1996, protects your health information and patient data. So that can include treatment, payment, or even your hospital operations. And so these are just some examples of sector specific laws. But the main point here is that we still are really lacking that broad based federal legislation on user privacy. Specifically focusing on California, we have the California Consumer Privacy Act. And the reason why I'm focusing on California is because we have the most extensive privacy laws in the nation. So this kind of opens a possibility of what other states could also implement these laws, because again, a lot of these privacy laws are very ambiguous in most states. So just to go over this act, it's still very recent and relevant, and it aims to put more control on the consumer in protecting their own privacy. So as you can see right here, a consumer can now opt out of giving away personal information as well as to know what kind of information is being collected. And the chart on the right gives you kind of like a visual representation of some states that have similar laws and what they entail. But again, there really is no um, set adequate federal law that's in place to protect consumers in all aspects, like the law we have here in California. And on this topic related to consumer privacy, I think it's also very important to know what we can do individually to protect our own privacy. So, if you live in California, you have the right to ask a company to tell you what personal information it has about you, as well as to stop it from selling personal information. And so, you can always submit a request and verify your identity, wait, and then the business is going to have 45 days to either accept or deny your request. And if they just flatly refuse to do that, Californians can contact the general attorney's office. So California does have this set structure on what um, Californians can do in the case that these businesses or companies are not adhering to these legal aspects. So just to summarize everything, we know that hundreds of data brokers, companies, and third parties sell and distribute our data. And not only is that a violation of our privacy, but there's just not yet an adequate federal law in place to protect the privacy of millions and millions of Americans in the United States. But we should be expecting more substantial privacy legislation in the next few years, as California and another couple of other states take the lead. So I think we can really look forward to that and also participate in exercising our own privacy rights and protecting our information. Thank you for listening to my presentation.